Welcome everybody to this interim of YouTube Masterclass. I'm Dr. Aaron Sheely. I'm a professor. I teach for USC, Calarts, and Harvard. And I was just confirming with those schools recently about where I stood and where I sat, and it looks like Masterclass is going well. We've taught class on film criticism. We've had class on direct movie directors, special effects, and this summer is going to be a course on the Western. So we're just kind of getting started, but the exciting thing is really, I've already spoken to you on the interim, is that as soon as I get through the Western, I'll be tenure, but I'm already that if anything were to go wrong, they'd put it in place before that went wrong, somehow. And that's not illegal. It's like an insurance on tenure. So, not, it just makes it a little more comfortable knowing that the semester is guaranteed and many more to come in the future. I've been working on a lot of YouTube creators when I had then achieved master class. And what happened with YouTube is if you make hundreds of movies and some of them were pretty successful, then they'll put you up to YouTube creators. And then it's like you make hundreds more, and then they put you up to YouTube masterclass. But at the same time, you have to watch all the videos in between, the how-tos on YouTube, the what to do on masterclass videos. And you can just put those are all on YouTube, so you can watch them on the internet just repeatedly, and that's the experience you need. And then there's a couple other things about it that you can do. You can be a YouTube user a lot and find playlists and build playlists, and there's things you can do that will help your other movies succeed online. And we have something similar to that, like on Facebook with my books, where it's like you can find my partner, Sohaila Smith, who drives from me through computer, so I see her what she's writing, and she writes to me, and then we write back and forth, and that's how we write books together. And and we've been doing that for a while. In this new book we're writing, I won't give it away what it is, but we're writing it now, and it kind of like it takes this sort of style of me and her style and blends them together. And there are many techniques you can use when you have a partner, but the best thing is when you have computer to computer access and replay what all scenes you've got in the book. And it's a lot of process. Writing a book in and of itself is a really hard thing to do. Like I've written 70 books, and a lot of them go through on Facebook's on the title. You just put in the title, and the ones I did with my partner, you put in the title, and of the book, and sometimes you put in the author, and it's one of the first things on the thread. And I'm sure it won't stay like that forever, but right now it's sitting at the top. It's on Twitter, it's sitting at the top. I don't know, one thing that's cool about the internet is that it has a shelf life of forever. Like maybe not for its initial, like, high market value, but like later it can still be making money down the road. Like if it stays on and more people watch it, then down the road they can see more of it. And I don't really do it for the money anyway. Like this particular one isn't really for money, but somehow the ratings it gets will go back into the whole master class, So really, there is a little bit, and that's a good thing, but I don't really deal with the accounting end of it. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what we do as a company to build ourselves up enough so we can write books and make movies and have them on the internet, easy to find. And then there's also music. And with music, it's like the same thing, only you can go through video and you can channel. Audio channeling is interesting because it's like the video is not really important at all, but the audio channel is what you want to put out there. And my band was The Dead Tell Your Riders, is now Poor White Trash on the same dude. You can see that in the room I'm in. It's pretty obvious, and you get that on the YouTube anyway. So I recommend you go to that YouTube. And what's good about it is there's a silent film section. These aren't movies I did, but there are a playlist of silent films that I added that you can go through and look through and see the history of silent film kind of in these like 300 movies that are on my site that I collected over the years, and now you can see it. There's music. There's also a Rolling Stone jukebox. It's like this Rolling Stone, and I work for them, so that's cool. And it's all these albums. Me and these other guys went through the magazine and found all their favorites, and some of these are oddities. These albums are real rare and oddity like. But it doesn't really bother me that Rolling Stone liked it a lot and wants to use it, and they'd already written me an email that said they'd really love to use that, and I use it too on my YouTube, so you can check the silent films on the Rolling Stone. And there's all kinds of other ones that are like criterion for a movie I like that I set as criterion, and then and all of that like takes overhead, but it's overhead that they're taking back into and of themselves. And so I don't really see it as being problematic that you get everything done, because then it's worth it and then it comes through. Now, in this terms of getting the professor class, it's one thing lucky and kind of gives me is why I have tenure insurance, quote unquote. It's not, is because I was a professor at CMU as a psychology professor for about 3 years. And so I really, if I was still teaching psychology, then yeah, I'd get my tenure in that. But since I did teach it for 3 years, my tenure's coming up. They're going to guarantee it because I have enough psychology hours that it's okay. So I'm just kind of telling you how things are coming along as my professorship. And all my PhDs are now 5 years old. They've been on the internet for 5 years, and they've been in for 5 years. And some of my friends are like, well, then why do you still talk about it? I'm like, because sometimes it's hard to describe to those in that I need to necessarily at the same time as those, uh, you know, others that are trying to get a hold of me. And so I don't have to talk on the phone a lot, but I go on the computer a lot and find these things written. And I'm like, so I'll get out my internet and I'll be looking through it and I'll be like, okay, that guy leaves me a good message. Yeah, everybody leaves me a good message. So all the jobs I've had for 5 years, Rolling Stone counted, Calarts research counted, are like all still there and still open, and that's cool because then that means your master class is sort of hinged on these other jobs and hinged on these other mediums you're working in, and that's not a bad thing to do when you're doing master class. We're not like anywhere close to the level of like the higher ups in master class, but we do have many master class that are really popular, that we've taught already, and that people still look at the classes and take the classes later. And as the years go on, they'll start taking more and more. More people will take the beginning course all the way, the film criticism, all the way to the directors. And so they've counted them, and there's lots and lots. Not like in the higher bracket of things, but like third or fourth tier on masterclass. We're not like at the top of that. Although the class is taken by so many, quite a few will, not quite a few, but a certain percentage, like 8%, 9% aren't really interested. And we don't really want any robot votes, because unless they control an actual term of people taking the class, and then we'll take robot votes. If there are actual people behind them. And that doesn't affect it at all because it already isn't set up to just take a robot vote. So the one thing that's fair about it is that, like, if I had to go back to my other social work credits for my job, I could still get credit for that, and there would be like that I'd have to do a psychology major to tie it all up. That I got interested in it was because I was suggested to do that, and it's kind of haunted my career because it's a hard job, and there's a lot of training, and there's a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of people to see and talk to, and it's fun, but it doesn't really pay the bills, and plus you're kind of like angry that your friend is angry, and I'm not psychologist enough to do that. So, but it's there, and we taught during that, and that's teaching credit too. So it goes through the teaching credit, and um, I have enough, and they're going to use enough, but they'd like for it to be master class, and so since I did the postdoctoral and postdoctorate, they're gonna give it to me in a few months, the official one. But if you think something's going to go wrong between now and then, well, it always does. But that has nothing to do with what the jobs are. That's just life in general. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I think that it's not really going to hinder me from getting the rest of my work done. It's not like anything is like imposing a threat on me, because if there was, it'd be totally noticeable, because I always do these things like the master class. So I'm not trying to say that like it's gonna like disintegrate. We're coming back. We're hired again at the end of the month. So I mean, if you're one of those people that like fret every day for tomorrow and think nothing more will be released by me and one of those fans, which is a small amount of people, then yeah, we're always going to release more. We got more movies planned, books planned, music planned. We're doing an album right now called Eternal Finite. It seems to be going along pretty well. It's the 31st album of Poor White Trash, and they're all pretty good, you know. But so those funding the school and job, and then of course whatever the producers take, which is pretty much the whole rest of it, you know. And that's not even because they get paid out of a different line, you know. I don't know. They've got all that worked out, and I don't want to talk about that, but I just needed to let you know. And it seems to be that we've got to set up to work and continue to work out. And working out for us isn't a bad thing. We do limit the time of today's discussion, but there's a few more things I'd like to discuss. You can also see my writing on Facebook where I do these things called like sponsored. Uh, they're sponsored and they're publicity for the companies that I write for. And you can do those online, and then they go to the .com, and then they show the site that you're talking about. And not everybody gets that. You know, they get a little bit of that, but there's like this thing, there's these details of, you know, these critic passes that get you onto these sites, and mine are all updated. And that was like from taking critical studies courses at California Institute of the Arts, which is what their writing program is and converts to be. It doesn't mean you can't do these narrative story novels like I've been doing the past couple of years. And but it really all that ties in together because they're all books. They're all what they are is they're represented as art. So I don't really think that at this time challenging my qualifications is a good idea if someone had that, because then they'd be like, well, he's already passed on Masterclass for 2 years. They already said they'd hire him for so many that like just it's not like I'm egging it on or anything, but I just don't want anybody, you know, losing their credibility over something they shouldn't, because we already have so many shows saved online, and they're saved all over, and they're not just shows, they're classes, and we're talking about a different topic, and we'll tell the story behind the movie or tell the meaning of the movie. And then I'm only teaching film classes right now, but have been encouraged down later on the trail to do classes on writing. But the master class, I wouldn't double it up on a couple of courses at once, because it's such a big top heavy program that you really need it. Like, you can do it once or twice a week, but once or twice a day would be like a waste of time, because you maxed out on how many bits you're going to put on, and you want it all to go into the class you have. That's why we don't have it more often. So the last thing I'll say is have patience, but we are going to teach the Western in a few weeks, and there'll probably be one more of these little notifications. So remember, when Masterclass comes up, that means I was still there. So don't worry, I'm not gone. If there's any time that goes on and I'm not teaching class, if you're that far ahead and caught up to this one, I will be back. It's just waiting for class to start, because of fall and spring and summer have to hit on a certain day. And with fall, spring and summer. So, and we usually do it as early as they can. So April 29th, still the date. Thank you for tuning into this interim of Masterclass.